that video this morning. I'm so glad I didn't.
Oh, me too.
That worked. So welcome again. Just to let you all know, we do live stream the sermon portion of our service via Facebook. However, the camera is strictly on me. That's what Barbara's doing down front. So nobody else will be shown, just me. And that way the video can then be viewed later by folks who missed church or weren't able to be here, or who live too far away. We have some friends and stuff we dip in from time to time to check on what I'm doing or see how Holy Covenant is doing. But we are glad to have you all here with us, both live and on Facebook. So will you pray with and for me, please? Holy One, bless our speaking and our hearing and our doing. May our words reflect your wisdom and grace. Amen. Mm-hmm. So Transfiguration Sunday is one of those minor Christian observations. That's what today is. Excuse me. Transfiguration Sunday is the last Sunday before Lent begins. But it's one of those like Epiphany and Candlemas and Assumption that we're vaguely aware of. We know, especially if we had certain traditions in our background, that we know that they exist, but we're not quite sure what they're all about. So, a few words of explanation about Transfiguration. It refers to this incident that we just heard that Jim read for us. Jesus' clothes are dazzlingly bright, and even his face shines so much that Peter and the others can't look at him. And so the understanding is that Jesus was revealed in his divine glory. And that's why it was so bright and why they couldn't look at him. Now, when we look back to the book of Exodus, the story of Moses coming down from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, his face also was shining because he had been talking with God, and they had to put a veil over his face. Art history side note, a lot of the early statues and paintings of Moses portrayed him as they had sort of symbolic lights coming out the side of his face. Well, later people didn't understand what those rays were, and they gave Moses horns. So sometimes you see Moses with horns. They're supposed to be rays of light. Anyway, back to Transfiguration. It literally means changing appearance, right? Which is what happened to Jesus. His appearance was changed and changed radically. Now that change told Peter who Jesus was. And he was so stunned, he was so stunned that he started babbling, all right? He didn't even know what to say. I can imagine it would be a shock. Peter was probably equal parts surprised, awed, afraid, and overjoyed. The Transfiguration was intended to show that Jesus was blessed and beloved by the divine, but it's also a marker for change. Transfiguration is part of change, or it is an indication of change. Jesus is beginning his ministry here. In the next few verses, he gives the disciples guidelines. Here he will after the incident with the young man whom he healed, the son whom he healed of the seizures, he gives the disciples guidelines for ministry. And he sends them out with words of advice. Instead of traveling all together and listening to Jesus, they're supposed to go out on their own now and teach and heal. It's a change because earlier on in Jesus' ministry, he was teaching them. But he's not going to be able to do all the work, or he's not going to do all the work himself. He's taught them and given them the tools that they need, so now he's sending them out to do the work. Change isn't easy, of course. The 7 last words of many organizations are, and I bet a lot of you know this, we've never done it that way before. And many of us know how difficult it is to change in our personal lives, our eating habits, or to quit smoking, or to start an exercise plan. There are changes to our lifestyle, and that's hard. But if we stick with it, we find that we're healthier, or we can breathe better, or whatever, right? So here's the question. Can we be transfigured too? I think every one of us can. We are all images of the divine. Our faces may not shine as brightly as Jesus, but we're not up on that literal mountain. We already shine with God's love and grace, even if we can't see it, even if others can't see it. That divine grace and light leads us into the world and down the mountain to show God's love and grace to those who needed him. Like Jesus, we respond to the needs of others. The first thing Jesus did after coming down the mountain was to heal a young boy. He wasn't basking in the glow, right? He wasn't just saying, oh, look at me, I'm shiny, I'm the beloved of God, look at me. No, he went to work and put that to work. Now, we all have different gifts. We're all in different life situations. But we all have some gift or gifts to share. And I'm not only talking about skills like carpentry or bookkeeping, although those can be very useful. I mean things like the ability to listen to other people, or leadership, or compassion. Sharing those gifts and talents of ours spreads God's shining grace through the whole world. But we have to be willing to change, to be that light. This week, the United Methodist Church held a conference to decide whether they would, as a denomination, accept LGBTQ plus clergy and allow their clergy to officiate same-gender weddings. Sadly, tragically, because the decision may cost actual lives, the vote was for a plan that didn't even maintain the status quo of forbidding the ordination of LGBTQ plus people. The plan went further, keeping that ban and adding penalties for officiating at same-gender weddings. As many of you know, I was a Methodist before I transferred to MCC. I was in the ordination process for the United Methodist Church. My parents were married in the Methodist Church. I was baptized and confirmed in the Methodist Church. I was married in the Methodist Church, had my son baptized in the Methodist Church, and went to a Methodist seminary. You can't get much more Methodist. But when I came out as a bisexual woman, I had to leave the UMC. My story's not unique. It's very far from it. I know many MCC clergy and members who were Methodist. I can think of 3 without even thinking hard. Just right off the top of my head. The reasons for that vote are complex, and I won't go into them here. There's a lot out there in the media about it. But the result is that the UMC decided not to be a light, to maintain a stance of exclusion and, dare I say it, Bibleolatry, that is placing what they believe the Bible says above the Spirit of Christ. They were and are not willing to change. But there are some voices in the UMC continuing to work and fight for change. Some UMC affirming supportive congregations are staying with the UMC to do that work. Others who have already done the hard work of change have chosen to leave the United Methodist Church because they are tired of arguing for justice and grace and humanity and feeling that their energy is better spent forging ahead on other issues rather than fighting this battle over and over again. Now, I understand both decisions. That's largely the same choice I was faced with 15 years ago. To try to stay and work within the system to change things, or to leave and get on with my calling to serve God and others without the additional burden of justifying my simple existence. Now, it can be difficult and painful to change and to be the source of light. for others. But sometimes that is simply what we are called to do, to be. Transfiguration Sunday, as I said, is the last Sunday before Lent begins. This Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent. And as we prepare to come down the mountain and enter into Lent, that time of prayer and reflection, consider your gifts, your talents. It is, as I said, traditionally a time for reflection and prayer, for contemplating how well we are living our lives, how well we are living up to our own standards. Some people have a tradition of giving up something as a sacrifice to help them focus. Foods like chocolate or red meat, or maybe some activity like watching TV or going out to the bars. Some take on something. Studying a spiritual text or learning a new spiritual discipline such as morning prayer, or maybe they begin volunteering or tutoring or mentoring. Giving up something and taking on something, making a space for spirituality, for reflection, for awareness of the needs of the world. Those are not bad ways to observe Lent. So as we begin that Lenten journey, think of this. How can I bring the light of love and hope into the world? And let that be your prayer. In all God's names, amen.
Amen.